This is a Dragon Blazer production, and I am the little boogeyman.
All right. Coming down the aisle, it's the podcast tag team champions of the world, the Rage and Blaze Show.
Welcome to the Rage and Blaze Wrestling Review Podcast. We're going to start off with Wrestlemania 1, the granddaddy of them all, the one that started this whole wrestling phenomenon. Okay, so in this podcast, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reviewing the 4 major pay-per-views. So you got WrestleMania, followed by Survivor Series, and then, of course, Royal Rumble and SummerSlam. My name is Rage.
And I am Blaze.
So we grew up watching wrestling in the heyday, back when Hulk Hogan was an American hero, the Ultimate Warrior was the only one that could stand up to him. Then we obviously loved it in the big boom of wrestling when you had DX, NWO, The Rock. I mean, those were the heydays that we absolutely grew up loving this sports entertainment, I suppose you can call it. And that is kind of our background on why we love this so much.
Yeah. What was your favorite wrestler when you were watching it back in the day?
Oh, obviously the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, mine was always Triple H, because I was really a big fan of DX.
So obviously there's some DX ties and some love there. Obviously, it wasn't just the comedy I liked about Shawn Michaels. It was his wrestling ability. Every match you watched, hell, he made Ric Flair look like an amazing wrestler. And he made The Undertaker. I mean, everybody loves The Undertaker. Everybody loves that persona. I do. He's never really been one of my favorites because he's the type of guy, almost like Stone Cold Steve Austin for me, where if you've watched one of his matches, you know what he's going to do, and in my opinion, you've seen that match a million times. Punch, stunner, you know.
Very controversial there.
No, I don't care how controversial it is. It's the truth. Guys like Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, their matches looked very similar. Okay? Every match looked about the same, but then you had guys like the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, Bret the Hitman Hart. You had these guys that come in and just pull out Kurt Angle. They pull out these matches, and every match felt like a new match and a treat because they just pull out all the stops. And that's just my opinion of wrestling. Those are the type of wrestlers I like more. Not that I don't enjoy those other, Stone Cold Stunners. I enjoyed them, but you know where I'm going with this.
Well, this podcast will be the perfect example to see if Rage eats his words on these, because I'm sure you probably haven't seen those matches in forever.
Yeah, well, you know what? Fuck you, Blaze.
Fuck you too, Rage.
Alright, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and get this started with WrestleMania 1, started back March 31st, 1985. So we're talking 35 years ago this played. So we're going to watch it. And
you were 1.
I was 1. Well, I wasn't even 1 yet. My birthday hadn't happened yet, so I wasn't even 1.
Fair enough.
So we're going to go ahead and watch this and give our opinions on a 30-year-old wrestling pay-per-view. So let's get started. So this thing starts out very 80s. You have pictures of all the wrestlers that are going to perform that night. Very 80s themed background music going on. And you can definitely tell it's very, very dated. Our shows obviously start out with a little bit more pizzazz nowadays.
You can definitely tell it's a lot older. The font is very 80s, very outdated. Also, what I noticed, we started out a little bit. We got to see Mean Gene Okerlund sing the national anthem, and well,
it's a far cry from like John Legend doing the national anthem nowadays, or America the Beautiful, I think is pretty much what he's saying.
I would compare it closer to William Hung, actually.
Oh, it was very rough, but then they compared him to Robert Goulet.
Yeah, he was terrible. They were wrong.
And I'm thinking he sounded more like Robert Goulet while Will Ferrell played him on Saturday Night Live, as opposed to the real Robert Goulet.
Absolutely. So you can definitely tell this was their first pay-per-view. You can definitely tell that this was still a young promotion. They really haven't gotten anywhere yet. It really kind of looks like one of those ones you go to at a high school, a local wrestling.
A little bit bigger than that. I mean, there's a crowd. It's Madison Square Garden, New York City, for crying out loud.
They interviewed a guy named the Masked Executioner, and I've seen more cleverness in a local promotion.
Yeah, and that's how the show starts out, is the national anthem, and then Mean Gene pre-recorded, because obviously he was just in the ring singing. So then you got a pre-recorded Mean Gene Okerlund. He is interviewing Tito Santana and the Executioner.
Now, Tito I've heard of, and I'm pretty sure he's a good wrestler. We'll see here in a sec how he does. Masked Executioner, I've never heard of. I've never heard of this guy, and he looks like they just took him off the streets.
Yeah.
It's a terrible mask.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously didn't make a big impact, because I've watched this WrestleMania and I didn't even remember him. So, I mean, I've went through and I've watched all these before, and he's obviously a name that most people would not remember.
And why is his mask red? Wouldn't you think of an executioner? You would think of a black mask.
Yeah, well, this is the 80s. Things were done differently.
No, executioners have been murdering people for many years, and they were black in the 1500s. I'm just saying.
Okay, well, I think it's about time for the bell to ring. Okay, so this first match, Tito Santana versus the Executioner, it gets off with a pretty good start. There's a big crowd pop. I think the fans are really enjoying this. He throws the Executioner out of the ring like 3 times during this match. He does a high-flying elbow, and the match finishes off with a figure 4-lock submission. Executioner submits. But it was a pretty good start for this event. It kind of felt like a squash match. The Executioner didn't really get much off.
Oh, it was definitely a squash match. I don't know if I would call it a pretty good start. Tito Santana was interesting to watch. He was decent. The Executioner, he pretty much fit the description I already gave him. He looks like a local talent that doesn't really know what he's doing.
Right, it was such an embarrassing performance, he had to wear a mask.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wish I was wearing a mask watching it.
Come on, it wasn't that bad. Tito Santana did keep the crowd energized. He threw a few high-flying moves. He even threw the Executioner. Yeah, he even threw the Executioner out of the ring, and the Executioner landed on one of the chairs, which I thought was pretty, he was cool for that time, for something like that to happen.
Like I said, Tito Santana shined, Executioner did not.
Obviously. You also have to kind of put yourself in the position that this is 1985, so wrestling is a lot different than when it is when the cruiserweights start kind of taking over and things get a little bit more heated and exciting in the ring in the 90s. So, I mean, you can't fault them for, the high-flying elbow was probably the most exciting move in the match, and obviously we know of a lot more high-flying, better moves that we can see today.
That's a fair point, but this is a review podcast, and I'm going to review it the way I see it.
Okay, fair enough, but, okay, let's move on. We're going to get Albert Hayes, who really looks like a fat kid that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
I don't know how he got this job. Kept looking over to the corner like, is this okay, Daddy? Is this okay? Can I do this? Is this fine?
Yeah, he kind of looked like if he didn't do a good enough job, he wasn't going to get a treat afterwards. Maybe Daddy said he can take him out for ice cream.
Oh, Vince McMahon was staring at him from the other side.
Definitely. He's saying only winners get sprinkles.
That's right.
Okay, here we got the second match. We got Special Delivery Jones versus King Kong Bundy with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, accompanying him. And this match wasn't much of a match at all, was it?
No, it was super short. King Kong Bundy definitely sent him away. Special delivery.
Wah, wah, wah. So anyhow, so pretty much all we get is Special Delivery going in for a hold. King Kong Bundy picks him up and bear hugs him, throws him into the turnbuckles, who they called the Avalanche.
The Avalanche, yep.
And then he falls to the ground, and King Kong Bundy does a big splash and pins him 1, 2, 3. They claim it was a record-breaking time, 9 seconds.
They said it was 9 seconds, but there's no way that match was 9 seconds.
If you go to Wikipedia page, it is billed as 25 seconds.
It takes 3 seconds to do the pin.
Yeah, obviously. So, I think they were a little jumping the gun with the 9 seconds there. It was about, I think it was more than 25 seconds, Wikipedia says.
Yeah, 25 maybe. There was 3 moves through the whole thing?
Yeah, there was a bear hug, the avalanche, and then the big splash, and then 1, 2, 3. So this was a really quick match, over and done. Nobody's really ever heard of Special Delivery Jones.
I've never heard of him.
He's another guy that's kind of lost in history. But obviously, I think a lot of wrestling fans listening, you know who King Kong Bundy is. He was 6'4", 400 plus pounds. I mean, he was a massive mountain of a man.
Not to mention Jimmy Hart, that's a legend in the business.
Yeah, I believe he is in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yeah, getting to hear him, that was pretty good. And actually, you know what? When Special Delivery Jones had his interview, it seems like they interview all the wrestlers before the show, or before the match. He was entertaining to hear.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. He could talk. But once again, he didn't last much long in the ring there.
Nope. No, it was a squash match. I said the last match was a squash match. That was a legit squash match.
Yeah, the last match lasted just a little hair under 5 minutes. So there was actually a match there. There was a few exciting moves, couple holds. This one was just flat out, let's let King Kong Bundy push his way around, and let's show the people how dominant this man is. And that's really all this match was meant for.
Pretty much.
Okay, so we're going to move on. The next match, we do have a legend coming up. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is about to take on Matt Bourne.
Now, when I was a kid, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was one of my favorite wrestlers.
Yeah, you kind of like them dragons, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, let's move on to the next match. Okay, so we just finished the third match on the card, and it was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Matt Bourne, and this is the first match so far in this Wrestlemania that it actually went a little back and forth. That Matt Bourne actually got a few moves in. He got a couple suplexes in. But it was a decent match. I actually kind of expected this to be a little bit more exciting, being that it had the legend Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in it. But I mean, it ended on a high note with a flying crossbody off the top rope. 1, 2, 3, he wins the match. But I guess I just expected a little bit more excitement, but it is what it is. The match lasted a little under 5 minutes, but it was the first match in the card that wasn't really a squash. There was actually some back and forth in this match. It wasn't all one-sided with the winner pretty much doing everything.
It was by far the best match of the night so far. Just watching Ricky the Dragon Steamboat,
Yes, I agree. Like, I would have liked to see a little more, but it was still nice to see him. You could definitely tell there was we had a legend in the room instead of kind of more boring matches.
Right. And you can also tell as soon as they announced Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, you could definitely tell he was a crowd pleaser, a crowd favorite. There was a huge pop for him. Also, something we'd like to point out at this point, so far, 3 matches in, there has not been any entrances, which anybody who has watched WrestleMania knows that the entrances sometimes are almost as legendary as some of the matches. I mean, remembering Shawn Michaels come from the top to take on Bret the Hitman Hart in the 60-minute Iron Man match. I mean, those type of entrances are legendary. I know a lot of people look forward to Triple H's entrances every year. He always does something different. John Cena, even though I'm not a huge John Cena fan, his entrances were always pretty exciting for WrestleMania. So it is kind of, seeing the little baby seed of WrestleMania 1 before it becomes the granddaddy of them all, what it is today, is very interesting to see, because all you get is a Mean Gene Okerlund interview before every match so far, and then you get a Howard Finkel introduction while you're already in the ring, almost like it's a boxing event.
Oh, it very much feels like a boxing event. Everybody's outfit so far has been essentially just one color, just like this one. Ricky the Dragon had white. Matt Bourne was red, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's how forgettable he is.
Right.
We can't even remember.
It might have been black.
It might have been red. Might have been black.
The most interesting look so far has been the Executioner. It looks like he made that at home with his mommy.
Yeah, it definitely looks like he could go to any Halloween store and pick up that generic mask, and it just hasn't been the flamboyant outfits that we know and love some of our wrestlers that wrestle today,
including Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I remember Ricky the Dragon. He had like this big cape that he would come down to.
Yeah, wings.
Yeah, he was always very, and that's probably why I took to him so much. Like, I like the guys that are more charismatic. Like, right. I like the big, those type of guys. So it was weird seeing him just wrestle with white and no entrance. The entrances is really taken aback, which makes me think that back then they just didn't do entrances. It just wasn't a thing on any show, let alone WrestleMania.
Right, and like I said, I mean, this was a different time. I think wrestling was viewed a little bit differently. I think these guys watching it treated it more like a real sport, and this isn't really sports entertainment yet.
This is back in the time when people believed wrestling was real.
Yeah, I'm sure this is around. We'd have to do a little bit more research to see when that cat kind of came out of the bag. But, I mean, Madison Square Garden, the big boxing venue, I mean, a lot of legendary boxing matches have happened. So, obviously, they're definitely treating this like
a boxing event.
Yeah, I'm sure there was probably some betting going on where I don't know if that really happens today in wrestling.
It probably does, to be honest with you. People are weird.
Yeah, I'm sure people would bet on anything. I think during this whole quarantine time, I think I saw betting on marble racing. So I saw a few YouTube videos of marble racing. So.
That's right. I betted on the red marble, actually.
Did the red marble?
Absolutely.
I kind of went with the more colorful blue, kind of looked like a galaxy type of marble.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he's going to make it this year.
No, I mean, he's got a long way to go. I think he got injured in the last race. Came crashing.
Got a little bit of crack?
Yeah, I think he kind of crashed into a rock.
That's tough.
It's shortened his season, but I think he'll come strong next season.
Red for the win. Woo-woo.
Okay, we're getting a little off topic, so let's move on. We've still got a lot of WrestleMania to go. So the next match we've got has another legend, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, versus David Sammartino.
Man, it will be nice if at least one of these matches has two people that I know.
Yeah, well, so far you're not going to get that, but I'm sure we'll get that later in the program. But we'd also like to point out, you can follow along and watch this with us on the WWE Network app. Every WrestleMania, from the beginning all the way to the two-part WrestleMania they just recently did this year, the quarantine edition WrestleMania, which was very
interesting.
I mean, we'll get to that one, obviously, but I don't know, it's very different.
Wash your hands.
So anyhow,
you should wash your hands.
Shit. Gotta wash your hands. So we're doing this in my living room, people. We're not in a studio. So just keep that in mind. My wife has to wash her hands.
That's right. All right, let's watch this next match.
Okay, so the next match we got Brutus Beefcake with Johnny Valiant and his opponent David Sammartino. I think I said Bruce earlier. Or Bruno. And
the legend
with Bruno Sammartino at his corner, which that is a father-son duo. Now, Bruno is a legend in the business. He held the WWF title for 11 straight years, a record that will obviously never be broken.
No, that was a different time back then. They didn't do as many shows. Yeah, that's not going to be broken anytime soon. So he's going to stay in the record books for that one.
So we noticed that Brutus was standing in the ring at the beginning of the match and was announced by Howard Finkel. But then David, with Bruno, got an entrance. And they came out to a huge pop, obviously. A lot of that probably has to do with his dad. So this match went back and forth. It was a back and forth match. But then it kind of got out of hand when Johnny Valiant got involved. And then Bruno got involved. And then it just became a big brawl. So they called this a double disqualification.
Which, let's be real, nowadays that would have been a disqualification for Brutus the Barber Beefcake because he attacked him first. He attacked
now, Bruno. I'm going to correct you right there. You called him Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Now, I'd like to point out that this is before he was the barber. He looks like he came out to kind of like a playboy, like a male stripper type of look. And his manager was Luscious Johnny Valiant.
Well, he'll always be the barber in my heart.
Growing up, he was the Barber Beefcake for us. But I just wanted to point that out, that he does not have that persona as of yet in this WrestleMania.
Slip of the tongue, my bad.
So that match was the longest match so far, going on for almost 12 minutes long. And it was a decent match. It wasn't a bad match. It was a back and forth. It just wasn't as exciting, I'd say, as some that we've seen. Now, the next match, the fifth match in WrestleMania, was against the champion Greg the Hammer Valentine. He was the Intercontinental Champion. So this is the first title match we have ever had in WrestleMania history. It's also the first time we've heard entrance music when Junkyard Dog came out. And he came out to some, like, soul music, and he had a huge...
Oh, the fans obviously love Junkyard Dog.
This was definitely the biggest pop of the night so far. He was definitely a crowd favorite. He got in there, and he started doing his on all fours headbutts, and Greg the Hammer really sold those headbutts, made himself look really dizzy. But it was a very, very exciting match. The crowd was extremely into this one. Yeah. And so far it's probably been the best match of the night. Now, Greg the Hammer actually pinned Junkyard Dog, but he had his legs on the rope.
Oh, we got our first instance of true cheating.
Yeah, so we've got our first little controversy ending here, where Greg the Hammer Valentine uses feet to leverage himself on the pin.
Leverage pin, yeah.
The referee counts 1, 2, 3, and then Tito Santana actually comes back out and lobbies and points out the cheating. So the referee decides to restart the match. But at this point, Greg the Hammer Valentine with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, we got to see the return of two people already that's already shown up in this WrestleMania. Jimmy Hart and Tito
Santana.
That's right.
So anyhow, Greg the Hammer wants to come back in and fight, but Jimmy Hart's pulling him back, saying it's not worth it. So they end up counting to the 10, and they disqualify Greg the Hammer. And anybody that watches wrestling knows title cannot be changed on a count out.
So yeah, Junkyard Dog won the match. It was a pretty good match, probably the best of the night so far. That's hard for me to say because Ricky the Dragon has wrestled, but that was a pretty slow match.
Right. But obviously this was definitely a crowd-pleasing match, not the finish the crowd wanted to see, obviously, because they were definitely in Junkyard Dog's corner. He was definitely an exciting figure in wrestling. During the match, he's barking at Greg the Hammer Valentine. He barked during the interview with Mean Gene Okerlund before the match. Very crowd pleaser. But anyhow, unfortunately, the match ends in count out. So we're going to move on now. Okay, 6th match of the night is our first tag team match for the WWF Tag Team Championships.
Yes.
In this match, we have absolute legends in the ring. We've got the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov with their manager, Classy Freddie Blassie, and their opponents, the U.S. Express, which is Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda, with their manager, Lou Albano. Now, people will remember Barry Windham was a future Four Horsemen, even got inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame with the Four Horsemen. And Mike Rotunda, everybody would know better as Erwin R. Shyster, IRS, and he is the father of the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. So this is a pretty good match, pretty exciting tag team match. It goes back and forth. I think this was probably pushing the best match of the night, maybe second. I think the pop for Junkyard Dog, I think that might have been a little bit better. But this one also ends in heartbreak as there's some interference. Barry Windham gets hit in the back of the head with a cane, and the other team gets the win. 1, 2, 3. Referee doesn't see it. They don't correct it. And they announce the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov as the new tag team champions of the world. So what'd you think of this match, Blaze?
Well, so first off, one thing I noticed, this is our first match where both teams kind of got entrances. Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik sang their song that got resounding boos and people throwing things in the ring.
Well, this obviously is USA, right? USA, right?
Yeah, this is the start of the, well, probably not the start. This has probably been going on for a long time. Of if you're a foreigner, you're the enemy.
Yeah, you're the villain in wrestling in these days, and for many years to come. It's probably not until maybe 20, 30 years down the road before you can be the hero and still be a foreigner.
Yeah, unless you're from Canada. Canadians are all over the place in wrestling. Oh, Canada. But yeah, they were throwing stuff in the ring. They were not a fan of the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. But, and then the other team also got a nice big entrance.
Yeah, they came out to some poppin' music. Looked like some kind of a patriotic type of theme.
Well, they had USA jackets on.
Right. They were
really playing the USA versus...
Yeah, even Barry Windham was wearing some cowboy boots, which that was kind of his signature throughout his career. He wore cowboy boots all the time. So...
It's a pretty decent match. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good back
Our
and
first
forth.
tag team match, and then it's for the title.
And our first title change of WrestleMania.
That's correct.
That's because even though Junkyard Dog won the last match, he did not win the title due to countout.
So first title change was the WWF Tag Team Champions of the World.
So we are making WrestleMania history in the last two matches. First title match, first title change.
Literally everything on this WrestleMania is history. The first of everything, but sure.
No, but the reality is we can get first later down the road. A first ladder match, a first this, a first that. We will point out the first, even though this is the first WrestleMania. It will not be the last time or the last WrestleMania that we will hear of the first of. And we would love to point that out when we catch it.
Now, one thing I'd like to bring up is at the end of every show, we are going to tell you what we feel was the best match of the night from both of us, the worst match of the night, and not this show, but we are going to start ranking the WrestleManias as we go through them. So,
spoiler alert, this ranks number one at the end of this episode.
I don't know. For me, it's the worst.
It ranks number one.
That's correct.
Okay, let's move on. The next match we have is an absolute legend coming to the ring. Andre the Giant is going to take on Big John Studd with his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Ooh, I haven't seen Bobby the Brain in so long.
Oh, man, I am so excited for this match. Loved Andre the Giant. He was an absolute monster. Absolutely loved watching him in the ring.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay, so our next match has a stipulation in it. It's a career versus $15,000 body slam challenge. So the winner of this match is the first wrestler that can body slam their opponent. And it is between Andre the Giant and Big John Studd with Bobby the Brain Heenan as his manager. Now, this match was a typical big man versus big man match. A lot of chops, chokes, bear hugs, not a lot of guys leaving their feet.
Barely aggressive kicks to the shin.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I don't know if I recall ever seeing Andre the Giant throw kicks, but it was very low, very awkward.
And really not a lot of force to it.
No, but I'm guessing he don't have to do much effort to hurt somebody, though. So
true. It kind of reminded me of the Orange Cassidy kicks, if you watch any of that. If you know who Orange Cassidy is. Oh, well, he's on AEW now, so.
Okay. So, Andre the Giant, I'm sure you all know if you're listening to a wrestling podcast, but the man is massive. 7'4", 520 pounds, according to his Wikipedia page. The man was a monster of a man, and they even tell you during the match that he wears a size 23, and then they said a 24 boot. So I guess, not sure what the real one is. They mentioned both sizes. They also mentioned that the biggest shoe in the NBA at the time of 1985 was a size 19. So
he was a big boy.
That just shows you how big of a boy Andre the Giant is.
That's why he's called the eighth wonder of the world.
Obviously. The man was massive. So, like I said, this match didn't really have a whole lot of exciting stuff. It was just big man trading blows with big man. And the match ends with Andre the Giant finally body slamming Big John Studd to win the match.
Pretty slow match.
No pins, so these big guys didn't even have to get down on the mat and pin anybody. So
well, it's really far down there, so really far down there.
So, and then he won the $15,000, started throwing it out in the crowd. Very big crowd pleaser until Bobby the Brain Heenan kind of ruined the party and stole the money and ran out.
Yep, and then they interview Andre the Giant after the match, and he mumbled something. I couldn't really clarify very well.
He said, I don't care about the money, I'm just glad to body slam Big John Studd.
You were a little too clear with that interpretation.
Yeah, he's got this
I could
French
fully
accent.
Understand you, yeah.
He's got this French accent that kind of hard to emulate, but it sounded a little like that. Alright, so moving on, we're going to go to our next match. It's the first in WrestleMania history women's match. It's going to be Wendy Richter with Cyndi Lauper in her corner versus Leilani Kai with the fabulous Moolah in her corner. This will be for the World Wrestling Federation Women's Championship.
Now, I didn't realize they even had a women's championship back then.
Yes, they had a women's championship. This was before they were referred to as divas, and now they're not even referred to as divas anymore. So, I mean, this was long, long ago.
Long, long ago.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next match. Okay, so here we have the WWF Women's Championship match.
Ladies Championship.
Well, okay, so you got Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura doing the announcing throughout this whole show, and they keep referring to this as the Ladies Championship. So even though the graphics on the screen that tell you this is the WWF Women's Championship match, but they keep referring to it as the Lady Championship. So does Howard Finkel.
It's a very small championship. Really small.
Yeah, it wasn't very big. Very tiny, like a light blue belt. Mm-hmm. So, anyhow, this match was, it was the first in WrestleMania history to have a celebrity join them, which is a big deal in WrestleMania. There's celebrities almost every year. I can't recall a WrestleMania that didn't have a celebrity.
Yeah, those girls really like to have fun, Rage.
Wah, wah, wah. So anyhow, so Cyndi Lauper is the celebrity guest in this. She brings out Wendy Richter, and she does an interview at the beginning, very Boston accent. But anyhow, I don't know what else to say about this match. It was a lot of hair pulling.
I thought it was kind of cruiserweight like. I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's
for
right.
a women's, like an old women's match. I mean, the women's wrestling has gotten so much better these days. But I was pleasantly surprised by this match.
Yeah, I suppose it wasn't horrible, but it still had a lot of the hair pulling that kind of plagued that.
This is 1985 women's wrestling, so
right. So it still had a lot of that stereotypical. This is what we do in women's type of matches.
Oh, wait till we get to the 90s.
And then the ending kind of looked botched.
A little bit. I mean, she didn't really jump very high. But, I mean, she jumped off the top rope. It was an interesting ending.
Yeah, Leilani Kai jumps off the top rope, does a crossbody, but then as she falls to the ground, they kind of flip places, and Wendy Richter gets on top and pins her for the 1-2-3. But it just didn't. It almost didn't.
It didn't flow very well.
It didn't look planned that way. But that's what we got, and it's in the history books.
I'm pretty sure it was planned. It didn't flow very well. They might have screwed it up a little bit, but there was no way you had Cyndi Lauper in your corner and not win the WrestleMania match.
Well, obviously, it just the way it ended was just very awkward. Like, you didn't think that was going to be the finish of the match, and there it was.
Yeah. I give you that, but I'm pretty sure that was who was intended to win. We're not talking about a Montreal screw job or anything.
No. We're not talking that it didn't end the way they wanted it to end. I'm just saying the execution.
Oh no, the execution
just
was
botched.
Did
did not look clean.
Yeah, it should have been a little bit more flowy. Like, she should have turned it right away.
Right.
With the reversal, but
we got what we got, and it's in the history book, so here it is. So now we're going to move on to the main event with Hulk Hogan.
Oh, brother.
With Mr. T.
I pity the fool.
And they're going to be taking on Paul Orndorff and Rowdy Piper.
Oh, I'm excited about seeing Rowdy Piper.
With Bob Orton in their corner.
Now, Bob Orton.
Cowboy Bob Orton.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yes, he is the father of current WWE superstar Randy Orton.
Ah, yes. That's pretty exciting.
So anyhow...
And Rowdy. I love Rowdy Piper.
We kind of have a history with Rowdy Piper. We had a grandmother. She's passed away now. But she would actually buy us Rowdy Piper action figures. Not because she gave a hoot about wrestling. Because her heritage is Scottish, and she absolutely loved that there was a wrestler wearing a kilt.
If only she actually knew how Rowdy Piper was.
No, I don't think she ever saw Rowdy Piper in action. It was just the fact that he was Scottish.
Oh, I know. But he was pretty much one of the best heels in the business, and he was a jerk.
Absolutely.
And our grandma would have hated him if she actually got to see him talk.
I'm sure she did, but all she saw was a wrestler with a kilt, and she's like...
Oh, yeah, she liked it.
She's like, oh, I'm going to get the boys this.
That's exactly how our grandmommy sounded.
So anyhow, so here we go. We're going to, as she would say, keep on keeping on with this show, and we're going to move on to the main event.
Brother.
Okay, so the main event of WrestleMania. We've got, it starts off very celebrity-ish.
Oh, yeah.
They started off with first introducing Billy Martin as the guest ring announcer. He is a former Major League Baseball player, played for the New York Yankees, won 5 World Series, I believe 4 as a player, 1 as a manager.
Full disclosure, no idea who that was.
No, I
had no idea.
No, straight full disclosure, I had to look it up.
Fair enough.
Okay, so Billy Martin's announced first, and then we get, for some reason, Liberace.
A little song and dance to be the ring.
He's the
guest,
bell
ringer.
He's the guest timekeeper.
Yes.
And Liberace comes out and does high kicks with the Rockettes.
Yes.
So, on top of that, then we get Muhammad Ali announced as the special guest referee, but he is the outside referee, kind of like an enforcer.
He was literally there because he's Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
And he didn't actually do anything refereeing.
He argued with the other special guest referee, which was Pat Patterson. Which people who watched wrestling in the 90s will remember Pat Patterson as kind of Vince McMahon's lackey.
Right.
One of his goons.
Right.
So then we finally get the announcement of... We get the entrance to Rowdy Piper, and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, accompanied by Cowboy Bob Orton. And we get this, what you would expect from a WrestleMania entrance. You get the bagpipes. A whole group of guys in kilts playing bagpipes, leading these guys out to the ring. And so now we're starting to feel like you can see that this is the future of WrestleMania coming out. And this is what we have known and loved as fans for years, the big extravagant entrances.
It was pretty great.
It was absolutely great. Love the sound of bagpipes. So
I love Rowdy.
Yeah, Rowdy Piper is one of the greatest, and I don't know if you could call him underrated. I don't think he ever won the World Heavyweight Championship or the WWF Championship, which is a shame. I'm saying it here first. That is a damn shame, because he was so great. Wonderful wrestler, great character, just over the top. Absolutely loved Rowdy Piper.
One of the best heels in the business.
Absolutely. So then they come out. Next we get the real American. You hear the music, the iconic Hogan music.
I am a real American.
So you get him, you get Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, who I pity the fool. He comes out with, accompanied by Jimmy the Superfly Snuka. They come out, huge pop. You can tell Hogan is already a huge...
Fans were majorly into this match.
Absolutely huge pop for Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, and Jimmy the Superfly Snuka. So the match starts off basically just taunting in a sense. You get a little bit of back and forth on, oh, well, I want to fight him. I want to fight. So you get tags without anybody doing anything. And so you get the whole pointing at Mr. T. Hogan points at Mr. T. Everybody, do you want to see him come in? So then he tags Mr. T in, and then the match starts with Mr. T and Rowdy Piper. And so the match really had that big old, you could tell there was a big build-up in this match. Because they were really playing to the crowd the first 2-3 minutes into the match. I don't think a wrestling move had been done yet.
Now, after watching this entire WrestleMania, I gained a little bit more respect for Hulk Hogan. I've never been a big Hulk Hogan fan myself. I was always more of a Ultimate Warrior guy when I was younger.
But that's what makes you an idiot. But go on.
Yeah, well, he was more charismatic than just about everyone there.
Absolutely.
Other than Rowdy Piper.
Absolutely. Hogan definitely commands the room. He definitely puts on the show. He definitely builds up to the crowd. And then after the match, they interview the three of them, and you could tell him on the mic, he's second to none.
Oh, yeah.
At this time, there's nobody that can touch him on the mic.
He's great on the mic. He's very showman. My biggest issue with Hogan is I'm not a big fan of his wrestling style. His wrestling style is a little boring for me.
Well, he was there in a simpler time.
Fair enough.
You can get away with a clothesline and a leg drop and do a couple poses and move on. You win the match. He definitely cannot live up to some of the future superstars that show up now.
Well,
and even in the 90s.
And that's why I'm saying watching this, watching the entire WrestleMania and seeing everyone else, you see a difference. You see a huge difference between Hogan and almost everyone else there.
Absolutely. Hogan was a massive presence, and from the get-go. I mean, obviously, before WrestleMania was born, he had already had a following. You could tell. I mean, he's already got his theme music, where 80% of the guys didn't get no theme music at WrestleMania. They were already in the ring.
It was like a house show.
It was it was very different. Not everybody got theme music. Not everybody even got entrances. They came in during the pre-recorded Mean Gene Okerlund interviews, which I'd like to also point out this was the only match in the first WrestleMania that you did not get a Mean Gene Okerlund interview at the beginning of the match.
No, and I was kind of sad about that.
Well, yeah, I was too. Luckily, they did interview Hogan,
but
Mr.
not
T, and Snook at the end of the match. So
not Roddy Piper.
No,
who I really wanted to hear.
You didn't get to hear Piper talk. You did get to hear Hogan talk at the end, but you didn't get to hear Piper talk. But obviously, fans of wrestling know he had plenty of time to talk after this event.
Right.
And he did it very, very well. But you did get to hear his signature calling each other brother at the end of the show there. But unfortunately, this must have been or he at least didn't say it at WrestleMania. He didn't tell the kids to eat their vitamins and say their prayers.
Yeah.
So you didn't get that. I was a little shocked.
He also
not to
didn't
hear
tell
that.
us that what you gonna do when all the Hulkamaniacs run wild on you.
You're right. We didn't get that. We didn't get the Hulkamania. That stuff must come later. But you still saw that charisma when he got on the mic.
Oh yeah,
calling everybody
and
brother during the interview, and you could see his facial expressions, his pointing, all that going on in the ring, which made him such a big draw.
Yeah, he was a huge presence, very animated,
very, very animated. So he definitely carried this WrestleMania and gave it some legitimacy. Where I'd say the majority of the show was it was okay. It was good for a first show, but you could tell this thing, obviously, as we already know, blossoms into what it is today.
With all the knowledge we have of wrestling, it was kind of a slow, boring show. But, for a first time, obviously the main event was pretty good. Really good. So we get another sort of controversial ending to this match. It was pretty good, back and forth to the most part. Actually, you know what? I actually think the heels actually did more beat down than the actual baby faces in this match. And a matter of fact, we also got another WrestleMania first that we haven't pointed out yet. We got our very first steel chair shot in this match. Hogan's in the outside of the ring, which I found funny that there was no guardrail. The fans were literally almost up against the ring. I don't know if you noticed it. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, you could see Hogan on the ground, and the fans were literally sitting there right in front of him. No guardrail blocking them from the ring or anything. And the fans were actually pretty crowded up almost to the ring. There wasn't very much space in between. And Roddy Piper grabbed a steel chair from an audience member that, took that person's seat.
Well, that audience member was very nice to help Roddy Piper.
The show was almost over at that point. You might as well be standing during the main event
absolutely.
Anyhow. What are you doing sitting your ass down during the main event?
I'd like to find that fan and thank him.
Absolutely. He is actually the hero of this show due to the fact that he gave us our first steel chair shot in a WrestleMania.
Real man of genius.
So we have a huge thank you to Roddy Piper and Hogan's back for receiving that chair shot, because that is wrestling history.
He took it like a champ.
Like a champ. So anyhow, that kind of does it for this show. It ends with some weird 80s music and some still shots of the show.
It looked like the end of every 80s sitcom ever.
Right. So if you've ever been and watched a orientation video at work kind of reminded you of that. You know, you go to work and they show you these safety videos and the end is kind of cheesy with some still shots of people in the factory. That's kind of what it reminded me of, is very cheesy ending to a show, almost similar to the beginning with the still shots and the 80s music.
Yeah. All it needed was all the wrestlers just jumping in the middle of the ring and then freeze frame.
Favorite match of the night.
So, you know, pure excitement, I would say it's hard to argue that the main event was definitely probably the best match of the night. But I'm going to have to argue this because I still think the best match of the night would have to go to the Junkyard Dog defeating Greg the Hammer Valentine in the Intercontinental Championship match. Unfortunately, it ended in a countout, but I would have to say for this WrestleMania, that would have to be my favorite match of the night. Blaze, what did you think?
Well, I wanted so bad to say Ricky the Dragon Steamboat match was the best match. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy his opponent as much, and I felt like he didn't do as much as I was hoping to see. So, I have to give it to the main event. I don't want to pick the main event. I don't want to be that easy and say, well, the main event was the best of the night. But the main event was the best of the night. There's no questioning it. I'm sorry. But the main event was the most entertaining match. The fans were super into it. You had Hulk Hogan. You had Mr. T at his prime after the A-Team, after Rocky 3. You had Mr. T in there. And, of course, the biggest reason the main event's the best is you had Roddy Piper, and he was fantastic. I mean, he took that atomic drop, and he sells that move so well. That was one thing I noticed about Rowdy, is he sells the moves he gets so well.
And it's hard to argue that. Like I said, I almost went with the main event, but I don't know, something about the Junkyard Dog match.
Fun match.
I think he brought an excitement to it, barking, you know, during the whole match, doing the headbutts on his his all fours. I don't know. The main event was all right. I felt there were, you know, to counter your argument on why you like that match better, is I thought it was a lot of, hey, referee, look over here while these two beat up on one guy. And that happened way too often in that main event match.
That made it more fun for me.
Yeah, well, to me, it wasn't as much of a match as a, hey, look over here while we punch and kick this guy. And to me, the Junkyard Dog match was more of a good match. So that's just my argument, but it's hard to argue that the fans obviously went home feeling that the Hogan-Piper match would have been the best they saw, because it definitely got the biggest pop of the night.
It was just most enjoyable, and it told the most interesting story in my book. I'm hoping that every pay-per-view we watch, the main event isn't the best one. And I've watched enough wrestling to know that is not going to be the case.
Oh, no. When we start getting into the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, the TLC matches that they start.
Oh, yeah.
The Money in the Bank matches.
Oh, that one steals the show almost every time.
Early on Money in the Bank matches, when they first started that up, I can definitely tell you the main event's going to get overshadowed more often than not. In this one, we're on a little bit of a debate here, but you know what? Sometimes you can be wrong like Blaze, or you can be right like me. I feel I'm a pioneer in the way of saying that the Junkyard Dog and the non-main event is the best match, so I'm going to go with that match, and Steven's going to go, or Blaze, I'm sorry, is going to go with the wrong match. It is what it is. But I think we're going to close this out.
Well, more importantly, what was your least favorite match of the night?
worst match of the night.
Least favorite match of the night. I would definitely have to say probably King Kong Bundy and Special Delivery Jones. It lasted all but a second, and it was a squash match, and I don't know if you can call it a match.
It's a good choice. It was pretty terrible. However, I think the first match of the night kind of was worse. At least King Kong Bundy, you knew what it was. It is exactly what it was. A squash match. But the Executioner was just so terrible that I'm going to give it to the first match, Tito Santana versus the Executioner.
Fair enough. Wrong again, but that's okay. It's going to happen once or twice in your life. Maybe a few more for you. So, I think we're going to wrap this show up. Join us next time as we move on to WrestleMania 2, and that should be fun, where we have WrestleMania 2 and 3 before we start moving on to other pay-per-views like Survivor Series.
I believe we get to the third WrestleMania, and then after that it's Survivor Series.
Right. So I think we're going to get a bigger and better WrestleMania in WrestleMania 2, and should be fun. Join us for that, and have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Hey everyone, this is Blaze from the Ragin' Blaze and the Boomer and Blaze Show. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more wrestling content.